I just wanted to do a very fast video about how we should really appreciate the new machines. Now, most of you know I have antique machines. Almost all of them are going to be for sale. I just can't pick them up anymore. And I've had a real hard time letting go of them. But this is my brother LX3014. So finally, I said, okay, I'll use the brother. And this is a paper towel strip I just made. I haven't trimmed all the threads off yet. It came out beautifully. It really came out beautifully. That is, I'm trying to think which stitch that is. I'd have to look it up again. Not the multiple stitch. I think it's number 13 on the machine, which I think is their blind stitch. It's just beautiful. And these are green paper towels for March and St. Patrick's Day. And green and orange is Irish. And my family is Irish. So they're just, I mean, it took me 2 minutes to do this. So as much as we love the old machines, we really, I don't think at this point in my life, I think if I hadn't been able to have this, I'd be up the creek right now in some ways. I would be using either a Spartan or the 99 all the time, which is fine. I love those machines, but I picked this up without a problem, plugged it in, and then 2 minutes later I had paper towels. Sometimes you just need them to sew. Now, the other thing I just found out, I have always used original Brother bobbins in this machine, and I just did this piece with a cheap, inexpensive class 15 metal bobbin. So those will work in this machine, and I have 4 bobbin boxes of class 15 bobbins, so that's a big plus. The other thing I'm going to try, maybe later today, is using a Singer zigzagger on here for the cam stitches. Now, you can do that on like the Singer 237, which is a really nice zigzag machine. You can still use the zigzagger on a machine like that if you have the machine set to straight stitch. So this one has 6 straight stitch settings. And so I'm going to check at some point. I'm going to try and put the Singer zigzag on here and keep it on a straight stitch setting and see if I can also use the cams on this machine. The fact that the machine, the box says it weighs 12 pounds. One day when I weighed it, it weighed 10. So, but let's say 12 pounds. I mean, you just can't go wrong with that. And it's not only, I don't have a back problem, I have a leg problem. So if I'm holding, say, the 1591 or even the 99 in a Bentwood case, it's 35 pounds. But if my legs give out, the whole machine goes flying. And I don't want that to happen to the machines. So I think even people that collect and use antique machines, in my opinion now, should have a modern one. Not only for the simplicity of it and the improvements they've done, because there are some, but also for the lightweight portability. And I don't know, they're not, right now they're not very expensive if you can get them. So, but this is the Brother LX3014 who has just made my paper towels. Now here's the Brother LX3014 on the kitchen table, and again, because the Brother weighs 12 pounds, this is one of the easiest machines to both take out of a case or a box, put on your kitchen table, do your project, and then clear off the table. And I'm using it this morning to finish the curtain panels, and it'll do that beautifully. But what you also see on the kitchen table here is a Gateway Junior sewing machine. Now, that happens to be the first sewing machine I was ever given when I was 3. And believe it or not, they still sew, they still work, they are toy machines, but I can do this same project with a Gateway if I want to. And talk about small. Now, they're similar to the Model 20s. They're not as nicely made as a Model 20, but they're the epitome of sewing. The arm goes up and down, which moves the needle. And it's a chain stitch machine, and the feed dogs are connected to the looper. So after the stitch is made, the fabric moves back. It's so easy, and yet it does the same thing that you're doing with a big machine. So don't leave out the toy machines, or the Singer Model 20 is kind of in its own grouping. I called it a handheld machine. You know, you can hold it in your hand, but you know, all the small machines are kind of in that category where they're so portable, you don't really need any space for them. But the Model 20 itself is more well-made than the Gateway and some of the other toy machines. But don't leave them out of your thinking when you want just a little machine. I'm going to make paper towels with those. And because they do the same thing the big machines do. I have a dog who sometimes reacts to noise, and she's elderly, so the quieter I can be sometimes, the better. And the small machines will do that. But the brother, and I actually just bought another new brother that I haven't even opened yet. It's the LX3817, which comes in different colors. I ended up buying white. The brother machines are similar in some ways. The inexpensive brothers are similar in some ways to the Spartan, believe it or not, because of the simplicity and the amount of stitches. Only the brother and probably the new Singers. I looked at one new Singer, but for some reason, you know, a Singer is still an antique Singer for me and not necessarily a new Singer. And the 4423 by Singer is a heavy-duty machine. But when you're looking at a lightweight, easy machine to use, the less expensive brothers have buttonhole, zigzag, I think 6 stitch lengths, and then on this one there are 3 additional stitches for blind stitch, elastic, and the multiple stitch. So free arm, you can't go wrong with these if you're just looking for a sewing machine. And the fact, like I said, that it weighs 12 pounds, you can, I have bought those gray bags that I showed in another video for a sewing machine bag, and you can carry it anywhere. And so not only is that good for classes or quiltathons or anything like that, it's also good for at home. You take it out of the bag, you sew whatever you need to sew, and it goes back in the bag. And you don't have to buy casters for your table or cabinet to move things around. So I'm continuing with the 9 patches for the curtain panel. On the table here, you see the finishing portion of the patchwork or patch panel curtains. This is actually a pillowcase that I'm using. And what I have done is finish the patchwork fabric. As you can see, it came out beautifully, I have to say. Just beautiful colors in the fabrics that I bought. And what I'm doing, because I made this one with 9 patches, using 4-inch squares in each 9 patch, the sizing comes out perfect to use a pillowcase for the backing. Now you can use regular fabric like muslin, you can use any print fabric you want. Another idea is to use cross-stitch fabric and then make it a cross-stitch long-term project where you do flowers on the other side if you're doing a garden theme, or if it's for a child's room, you could do sailboats or bears or something in the cross-stitch fabric. So there's a lot of ways to back this. This is one of my favorite pillowcases that my mother used to have. So I'm going to use this for the backing of the fabric. And what you can see here is that I have centered the pillowcase. If you've done 9 patches, 2 rows of 3 9 patches each in each row. If you've done that the same way I have, you can use a pillowcase for the template to cut out your backing fabric. This is a standard size pillowcase. If you've done the 8 across and 8 down, you can just cut the fabric to match your patch piece. But basically what you're going to do, and you can see I'm going to lose about 2 inches on each edge. You center your backing fabric onto the wrong side of your patch fabric. And then you're going to fold this in. And this is called a fold over binding that you can use on quilts or on items like this, on almost anything that's flat. Some people have said that an attached binding, a separate binding, is stronger than a fold-over binding. But fold-over bindings, for me, are very simple. And where this is just going to be a curtain panel that's going to hang on a window, you know, it won't be tossed around like a quilt would. This is fine for this project. So you fold it in half all the way around and pin it in place. And then you're basically just going to put it in your machine and stitch close to this edge and leave the wider area there. If you stitch too close to the edge, you run the risk of this opening up or flipping up. So however much room, this is about a 1/2 inch, almost 3/4, but it's about a 1/2 inch. So if I go in a 1/4 inch on this side, when I stitch it, there should be at least a 1/4 inch toward the outside. Now there's another good reason to use a pillowcase, especially if you have old pillowcases anyway. It is the size you need for the 2 rows of 9 patches, half curtain panel. But also, if you have old ones, it's a way to be able to save your better fabrics for items that are going to be, you know, perhaps clothes or a quilt. This is going to, so the pretty side is really the patchwork, and the side that's going to go to the outside backyard, it is a pillowcase, but it's a printed fabric, and I now can use my muslin or my other fabrics for something else. Now when you get to a corner, I have pinned both the long edges. And when you get to a corner, and I knew that the 2 ends were going to be a little bit longer, you want to go ahead and trim the fabric to about the same length, extending beyond your backing fabric, so that you're not, unless you want really wide effect on the edge, you want to keep the fold-over binding consistent. So you can see that I am about to start this, and you have 2 corner options. One is you just fold it like that, fold it up like that, which gives you a squared off corner. And then the other way to do that, if you can see what I'm doing here, is you take your edge that's folded on the long side, fold it in like a triangle, and then fold this as if to make your binding, and that gives you what is called a mitered corner. So you have the two options. Because this is such a plain project, I'm going to go ahead and do just a square corner. It's very easy to do both of them, and it's just a matter of folding your fabric. So after you trim the two short sides to match the other binding edges and decide on your corners, then you just finish pinning this and then go around and stitch this to the backing fabric. Go right through all those layers. And you can see I have all four edges trimmed. It wouldn't be a kitchen sewing table without hand sewing in a basket waiting to be done. And the binding is ready to be stitched. Now, if you're doing the 8 squares by 8 squares size, when you cut your backing fabric, you want to leave about 1.5 inches. Cut your fabric 1.5 inches in on all sides from your patchwork piece. And then when you do your fold over binding, it will give you about 3/4 of an inch for the actual binding. So now we've got it pinned, and I'm going to stitch it. And then you have two options at this point. So let's pretend for the moment that I have stitched it. Didn't that come out pretty? So now I wanted the quilted effect on my window. And this is a flat panel that is just going to go on the window. And I'm going to hold it in place with suction cups. They're very inexpensive. You can get them at Walmart. And so when I get that stitched, I'm going to take embroidery floss, and I'm just going to make a loop, tie a knot, and put a loop at one on the other, tie it. I'm going to stitch it here on the wrong side, one in the middle and one at the other end, and that will keep the top from sagging. In fact, that's one of the advantages of using cross-stitch fabric for the backing. It's so stiff that it will keep it stiff. And then you're going to take an embroidery needle, which I have here. Pick one out that has a pretty good point on it. This is a little bit dull. This is a needlepoint needle. You want a large eye needle with a good point on it so it'll come through the fabric. And then work with about 8 inches of floss at a time and thread an embroidery needle, and at each joining, each corner, so there'd be one here, one here, one here, one here. Choose a color for your garden, and you want to go down, come right back up on the other side of the joining, and then tie a knot in the floss and trim it. It's as easy as that. So that, and you could have added, if you wanted to, you can put a piece of batting in between these two layers and make it an insulated, quilted window hanging. I already have knitting on my windows, so this is, I just wanted the two fabric layers, but you can easily put batting in. And then one of the reasons this is such a great project is that, especially if you're just learning to quilt, or if you have different fabric themes you like, is that, this is simple to make. It doesn't take long at all, and you can make these and show off your fabrics, change the decor in your house so easily with these. just by changing the fabrics. So again, after you stitch the edges, and make sure that you match your bobbin, you're going to stitch from this side to make sure that you are following the edge. So make sure your bobbin thread, which will show on this side, matches your fabric to some point. And then I don't know if I'm going to do pink or red. Red would make it look Christmassy, or geraniums. But I also thought of a light blue that would be like forget-me-nots. I have forget-me-nots in the backyard. So you can use your floss and the tying of the method to make it a garden piece. Yellow would be pretty. It all depends on what you want to match it to your kitchen area. This is going behind on the window where I have the kitchen table. But it's basically a garden theme. I could, I guess, even mix those colors if I wanted to, but I think I'm going to go with one color. You could use brown to signify the dirt. So anyway, it's a very easy project to do. You can use a pillowcase or your favorite fabrics for the backing for the 2 rows of 9 patches size. And embroidery floss, you would need, for this size, maybe 2 skeins. I would buy 2 skeins just to make sure you have enough of the right color, but you probably are only going to need 1. And then a sharp pointed tapestry needle to do the tying with. Very simple project. So now I'm at the point where I'm picking out the floss. Now I happen to have a very nice couple of floss bags, containers. They're made by Darice, I think, D-A-R-I-C-E. They have a flap closure, and each one holds tons of floss. 5 trays. But if you're just starting with this, embroidery floss is not only for cross stitch or other hand embroidery like chain stitch, or there are so many embroidery stitches, but it's also good just to have it as a basic thread in the house. Now this particular box of floss is mostly by Designs for the Needle, and it's an inexpensive floss. You get, I think, 36 skeins of different colors. Usually, like primary colors, you'll get 2 of each of the 36 skein is probably 3 each of 12 colors. They have like a Christmas theme. Another package might be primary colors. But you can pick up a bag of that for about $12.99, and then you have some colors of floss in the house. So here is the curtain panel, and what I did was, when I stitched it, I used number 13 stitch on the Brother LX3014. I forget if it's their blind stitch or their elastic stitch. And I used black on the front, just so it's like classic black. And because I grew pumpkins this last year, I used orange on the back. So now I want to pick out the floss that will go with all of these colors. And as I mentioned, I thought of forget-me-nots, but I have to picture there's going to be a knot at each corner. So I'm not sure if the blue, if I go with the pumpkin theme, I might go with the pumpkin theme. Simply because I'm making this the year after I grew pumpkins for the first time. So in this case, I will have to check. This is probably a full skein. I may work with like a 12-inch strand instead of an 8-inch strand, but work tightly and only pull about 1.5 inches up if I only have the one skein. When I said to work with an 8-inch skein, an 8-inch strand. You don't want like a 15 or 18-inch strand to get all twisted when you're doing this. So let me put the camera down and we'll do one square. And then what I'll do is also make the loops to hang this out of the same floss. And because I only have one of this, I think, I have another that's a little bit lighter. I'm going to use this first, but I'm going to work from one end to the other. So if I have to, I can use the next lightest shade, and it'll just look like shades of pumpkin. But I'll use the darker one first and work vertically. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in each row, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I need 40 little knots that go through the fabric. So let's do this close to an edge so I can show you. So I have a sharp embroidery tapestry needle, and you can do this, you're going to go all the way through the back. You can do this like quilting, and I used a pillowcase, so it's going to be tightly woven in the back, which is another reason for needing a good needle. So you can go like that and pull it right out the other side. And this needle's kind of big, but the tip of it is sharp. So you pull that through. So this is about 2 inches. And then let the fabric, I made that a little tight, so, and I usually put 3 knots in everything, just because you never know if in the laundry it's going to come out. And you might want to write down what color you're using. This is their color 398. And there is how you tie a quilt or a quilted piece. Now, if I had put batting in the middle of this, it would have been thicker, and I probably would have wanted to go straight down and then come up on the other side without just doing it, you know, from here to here. I think this will end up being very pretty. And now to do the loop, I think I'll take about 3 inches of floss. And these, I'm going to make 3 of these and then space them out equally on one long edge. So that's about 4 inches of floss. And what I've done is tie a knot in one end, and then I'm just going to take this, put it on the wrong side or the back side of the piece and run over it with the sewing machine, and that'll hold it in place, and you have very simple little loops. You can do tabs with muslin, where you would take a piece of fabric, here's muslin, fold in the edges. This is about 1 inch wide after it's folded, so 2 inches wide. And if you're using a curtain rod and you want this to just to hang across as a curtain and leave space between the piece and the window, you can put 3 of these tabs across the top and hang it on your curtain rod. So 2 different ways to hang it. You could actually put these through the curtain rod too, if you make them long enough. This is Like I said, I started with about 4 inches, and most curtain rods, the standard white ones, are 1 inch. So you have plenty of room to just slide the whole thing over a curtain rod if you want to. So 2 different ways to hang it. Lots of colors for floss to choose from. Lots of effects, lots of fabrics. And I'm trying to think how long it took me to make this. Not very long at all. And now that I'm at this stage, I can put the loops at the top, hang it, and when I get a few minutes, continue to tie it. So, a fun project.